Good morning, everyone. Last week, we started our journey into a new series entitled The Soul Awakening Practice. And so last week, I just laid some of the groundwork of the importance of where we are in this unique time in history. And now, more than ever, we are called to awaken, to embody the fullness of our divinity. Pictured here is Carolyn Mace. Many of you know her. She is a spiritual teacher. She has written numerous books, and I believe is a modern day mystic. I've attended many of her workshops, both in person and over the last couple of years, many of them online, virtually. And I can't tell you how many times that I have encountered one of her workshops, have participated in one of her workshops, where she begins by saying this: I do not have an allegiance to any religion. Any and all religion is a costume party, and as such, they do more harm than good. However, the mystical traditions in each religion are the jewels that are hidden by the nonsense of religion, which is why when each religion produces a mystic, they go after the mystic. They try to kill the mystic. They try to exorcise the mystic. Why? Because the mystic has figured out what power is and how it can be accessed from within, and they share it with the masses. It makes all religious authoritative leaders look like criminals, which they are. So my friends, when Carolyn refers to mystical traditions, she's talking about the teachings that invite us to have that direct experience with the divine, of God, whatever name you call, a higher presence, life force, creator of life, to have that direct experience within, not putting your attention and your bowing to the authorities out there, so to speak. And she calls them criminals because on two levels. One is because what they do to the mystic, they try to kill, exorcise, get rid of the mystic and treat them harshly, which I will share, which is not new. But I think as we look at just a small list, it really hones in how even religion can become corrupt. And she even calls the authoritative religious rule criminal because all too often, rich spiritual teachings about the power within, about knowing that the inner authority is alive within each one, is threatening. So therefore, rich texts have been hidden, destroyed, burned, and so on and so on. So let's look at this. The master teacher, Jesus, who was Jewish and followed the mystical teachings of the Essenes, was crucified. Mary Magdalene, who happens to be considered and new in her gospel that wasn't on earth until the 1940s and 50s, and in the Gospel of James that was also found along with other rich spiritual texts, show that Mary Magdalene was one of the most prominent followers, disciples, apostles of the master teacher Jesus. And she was physically and verbally attacked for being a female and then for teaching such things. And she was even shunned by her own family. And she was shunned even by the apostles because she was a woman. Moses was exiled from Egypt. Muhammad was exiled from Mecca. John of the Cross, for teaching such mystical things as the power of the soul, was imprisoned and was tortured brutally. And yet, in the midst of that, he dove deep within himself to unearth the rich teachings of the dark night of the soul. And Teresa of Avila, who was John of the Cross's mentor, like Mary Magdalene, was shunned. And Gandhi was brutally attacked and exiled. Martin Luther King was assassinated. And the Dalai Lama was exiled from Tibet. So as we look at these teachers, at these mystics, at these incredible visionaries of truth, although they come from different faith traditions, they taught, woven in their teachings, woven in what they professed, were very common themes. And I invite you, you may not know all of them, but you may know some of them. So I invite you to put in the chat box, if you feel so moved, a theme that ran through the teachings of these masters, such as the divine is alive in all of creation, is a theme, right? Everything is divine. What other themes could be woven and found, but said in different language because of different faith traditions? All life is sacred, absolutely. About the power of forgiveness and healing our wounds. People have direct access to the divine, which was very threatening, Karen, absolutely. We create our own reality. Yes, Gail. Any others? These are all powerful. So I'll share a few more. I think you've hit on a lot of them. They talked about oneness, that what is in one is in the whole, that what we do to ourselves not only impacts others, but other people. And what is alive in the whole, also what you do to your brother and sisters, you do, and your siblings, you do to yourself. They talked about the power of service. Not only are we here to discover our own divinity, to study and know the difference between our personality self, which is said in different ways, our ego, but to access our spiritual truths and knowing from within. But they also talked about the power of community, that it's not enough to know these things for yourself, but to use yourself into service of humanity. And on some level, they all taught about the power of love. Love transcends all faith traditions. Love is the ultimate expression and power, and is synonymous with the benevolence of the divine. And yes, someone said it before, the power is within. And so that power within, when we tap into, whether we call it the kingdom of God within, as the master teacher spoke of it, whether we call it mind, divine mind, the power of the mind, that there are the power of the heart. What Carolyn May spoke about, that speaks about, and says that we are being called to now. Yes, it is the energy age. Yes, we are to know that we are energy beings. Yes, study the chakra system. Know what that is about. And if you don't know that, don't worry about it. But what she says is that we must know at the highest levels the anatomy of our soul. To be called into the knowing of that's where the wisdom resides, that when we open our hearts, when we heal, we access the depths of our soul. And although that word may not be used in different faith traditions, it is said in many different ways. And so Carolyn May says that the soul is the battery of divine life within us. And not only does she say that, but we are embarking on this new series called the Soul Awakening Practice. But James O.D. and all of the contributors of this book also talk about now. We must unearth the mystical teachings, but these visionaries bring us the emergence of science that is supporting what the mystics have known. And why is this the most extraordinary time in our lives? Because we are poised to actually live into this in a way that the masses have not done before. And so through the teachings within the Soul Awakening Practice, it is a book, but it is filled with nuggets of information so that we have an intellectual understanding of each line of the Soul Awakening prayer. And then each chapter speaks about what it means. Each chapter calls us into beautiful readings, which call us into the contemplative, where we move from the intellect because they are so beautiful and profound that our heart stirs and our soul stirs, and we delve into the richness of accessing and awakening our own soul. And again, it is through engaging. There's so many different kinds of prayer, but they offer, James O.D. offers this prayer because it is universal in nature, and it speaks to all of the elements that are needed for our awakening. And so we look at the first line, soul awakening. What is that soul awakening? So Barbara Marx Hubbard, a contributor of the Soul Awakening Practice, says that we can look at it and understand it through the 4 E's of conscious evolution. And that is eternity, embody, emerge, and eros. Let's take a look at the first one, eternity. Our soul is eternal. It is the eternal you. Your soul has existed before this lifetime. Now, if you don't believe in incarnation, that is okay. You could still learn how to access the depth of your being from here. And Barbara Marx Hubbard and the authors of this book also say, not only has the soul, your soul, been alive more than this lifetime, but before your first human incarnation. Now, some of you might be getting uncomfortable, and that's okay. And I invite you to take what you like and leave the rest. James O.D. speaks to that belief that science has shown. Before it fully awakens, the soul is a hidden witness to the entire evolutionary process, as our DNA, which is believed to have the encoded wisdom of the divine, so brilliantly reveals human life and all life on planet Earth. are inextricably woven together as a part of one truly momentous evolving story. Pretty profound. And I believe, like Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, was tapping into that truth, but he said it this way. The soul realm includes the sum total of consciousness, all that the individual has experienced. In analyzing the soul realm, we have first the animal soul. The second element in the soul realm is the human soul. It is one step higher than the animal and comprises all the thoughts and emotions we entertain on the human plane of consciousness. And the third and highest element is the spiritual soul. And it is that desire for us to fully awaken to our divine identity. Now we move into the second E of the evolving consciousness, the awakening of our soul. And it is the embodied soul. And what does that mean? That deep within us, when I spoke of that DNA, our soul contains all of the knowledge, the resume, so to speak, of the entire creation story. I don't know, I find that to be pretty profound. It also, Charles Fillmore speaks of the different aspects of the soul, the subconscious, the unconscious, the conscious, and of the spiritual, the highest realm. That is when we have that direct revelation, and that is the deepest part of our soul. And so within our soul carries the understanding and the knowing of all the wounds that we have not had, not only this lifetime, but the beginning. The wounds of the collective are within us. That is why when one heals, it helps to move the profound healing of the whole. It also has the roadmap to our own healing. It also has the blueprint for not just our awakening, but the awakening of everyone, and which is said by O'Day in this way: the soul's unique task is to draw human consciousness inward and upwards on the greatest journey back to one source. So the divine split, we are all particles, all aspects, all lights, all souls of the one power, and we are on this earth school to remember the truth and return home to the truth of us, and for us to all come home to oneness. And then we move into emerge. Within everything that is alive is the impulse to emerge anew, to grow. There is no such thing of staticness. We see this being modeled in our weather patterns. It is that impulse to express at a higher voltage. And what happens in our human experience sometimes is when that urge is alive within us, it doesn't always feel and look pretty through our human eyes and through our bodies. We are asked to surrender. Sometimes we do it on our own. We're like, we walk away from a relationship, a job, a situation. But sometimes the ground beneath us, that rug is pulled from beneath us when we have a pandemic, when someone leaves us, when we experience so many people who have made their transition and we are dealing with great loss. Often that urge, that impulse, and that dying to the old is uncomfortable. It is painful. And in that pain, how many of you said, okay, I try to do it my way, I surrender. And then we're like, oh, I have a great idea. Let me go within. And then we are moving from the intellect to something deep within as we open our hearts. And this human experience of dying to the old and emerging to a new is often very painful and suffering. I can't tell you how many times an individual who is going through some kind of transition in their life, a change, they feel lost. As the teachings of the dark night of the soul of John of the Cross. They don't know who they are, why they're here. Who is God? They go asking these questions. And then they believe like, oh my gosh, did I do any spiritual work at all? Because my life is a freaking mess. And I feel like bleep, right? But as we begin to know that as we are embodying a human physical body, which is our temple, and it is of the divine, know that that dying to the old is often painful and we experience suffering, we feel lost. But as long as we are willing to go within and stay present to it, to stay present to ourselves, to get loving support from others, we emerge into that place of a greater embodiment, which we will talk about. And so OD talks about this human experience. Your soul must first experience the fierce intensity of living through much testing over many lifetimes and dramatically contrasting life circumstances before it can fully awaken. Then the awakening finally happens in the form of a powerful and spiritually charged breakthrough lifetime. I think this is a call for a big breakthrough lifetime. Wouldn't you agree, my friends? And then we move into, I just want to make sure I didn't skip that one. Sorry, sometimes this just likes to skip. Yes, okay, sorry. We move into Eros, is love, where we're asked to move from the love of material power, the love of material things, not that we don't enjoy them as expressions of the divine, but we move from the love of material power. We're being called to the power of love, and not that love of like and romantic love that we all know so well. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's called to being the full embodiment of our divine selves, where we surrender and are in that place of selfless knowing. It's love that cannot be put into words. It's the direct experience of divine. And when we are experiencing that, we are radiating from a high voltage. And so I'd like to share this one of the final thoughts as we begin to come to a close today. I invite you to take this really into your heart, not just your mind. When you are ready to see through the illusionary nature of all that divides humanity, and when you are drawn to passionately serve the evolving story of the unity of all beings, your soul is empowered to shine its ecstatic, all-knowing light into your heart. You experience the birth of higher soul guided intuition. So, my friends, even though I've explored with you having to access our intellect to wrap our brains around what is soul, you get to decide how much of it you believe or not, that point of power. And so, yes, first comes spiritual understanding through the intellect. And then we are called not to just understand it with our brains of our intellect, for we can never really know soul. We can never reach within and know the depths of that divine guidance unless we open our hearts. unless we allow the authority not to be what is all around us in the world and what is happening, but allow that authority to be that which lies deep within us. And yes, we do that by opening our heart to gain access to the depth of the soul as we forgive, as we let go and die to what no longer serves us. And as we say yes, and we do that through contemplation, not just the intellectual study, but through contemplation and through prayer and being in the stillness. And when we desire in any moment, what should I be doing? How should I be serving? And instead of using Google or asking your friends, to spend that inner time and allowing that time to grow in the depths of your being. And so I close by sharing two profound passages, contemplative writings in Soul Awakening. And if you feel so moved to share what you notice within you as I read them, I invite you to do that. And so, my friends, Soul's Awakening lights a fire of irreversible transformation, whose story ends only in our collective experience of enlightenment and peace. Each soul helps to liberate other souls when it awakens. Just think how many souls will awaken because you started to live from your essence. Out of the dark mud, the lotus catches fire in the light and beauty. Yours is the mud, yours the lotus. On this epic journey to soul awakening, so too for all. A great soul-driven planetary civilization will rise out of the dark, put potent struggle evolving humanity, allowing us to thrive at last in the light of peace, the full spectrum of beauty and diversity and restoration of profound harmony with nature. Namaste. Blessings of light, of love, and may you dive deep into your soul as you evolve and awaken. May your light shine.